that will include you, because you will be found out as one of those who belongs to the Hebrew nation. And so then Esther, having had her mind changed by an elder, Mordecai, said these words that have lived down through the years in Holy Writ: if I perish, let me perish. But then that was provoked by Mordecai reminding her, Esther, who knows that you might have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? NAACP in Georgia, I believe you've come for the kingdom for such a time as this. My prayer is that every branch, every youth council, every college chapter, every unit of the NAACP in Georgia is working diligently to register voters, to get them registered. You have a few days left, that you would remind churches on this Sunday that this is voter registration Sunday, and we can help you. We have a program that we started back in 2012 when I was still NAACP Stakeholder Relations Vice President. It's called Black Church 75, and we've been doing it since 2012 until now, when we ask churches to let us help them tell who's registered in the church and who's not, and they would go after those who are not registered, get them registered between now and the 11th, and from the 11th until the election, all eyes, all arms, all words should be focused on turning out that vote. So I challenge you to work with the churches in your local community, work with the mosque in your local community, work with whoever is willing to work with you to get them to turn out the vote. The NAACP's record on protecting the right to vote, winning the right to vote, what was done to get the right to vote should not be ignored in this season. You have names you can call, names you know, and their work speaks for itself. John Dale Johnson and many others, Earl T. Shenoster, and many, many others. But I ask you right now that every branch, every state unit will be working diligently to get folk registered and then get them out to vote on election day. The challenge is ours and is right for our season. And don't you forget it. This is your time, this is your place. Then the other issue is economic equity, or that lack thereof. Every unit in the NAACP throughout Georgia should be confronting their private and public sectors about what is being done to include African Americans and people of color, and all of the money that's being spent all over the state of Georgia, all of the school board money, all of the county council money, all of the city council money. Where are we in all of that? How do we influence that? Back to the original thing, the main thing, that right to vote. The NAACP has spent years on making this possible. So we should be on the front line of this, not backing up and not backing down. Then we need courageous leadership. Unbought, unbossed, as John Dale used to always say. Unbought, unbossed, as Dr. Gibson used to always say. Unbought, unbossed, as Shirley Chisholm used to always say. You can't have leaders who have to bow down to the power and then speak loud when they're away from the power. We must be able to speak power, speak truth to power, and do what is powerful in the sight of our people and our community. I look at where we are right now. A lot of folk are worried. They're scared, they're afraid, but I look at it as an opportunity. Why would you not take hold of this chance to be the leadership that we call on you to be? You're the only statewide civil rights organization. So why are you backing up and backing down? This is the time for a breakthrough moment. This is your time to do what you've been called to do. Why give up right now? Our young folk are calling on us. Our young people are looking to us for leadership. And don't be so self-possessed about your title. Don't be self-possessed about your position. I've been in branches many times when we argue about the minor things. I call it majoring in the minors. So I give all of our young folk and all of our folk 3 things to remember as you walk into this season of leadership. First is remember the 80-20 rule. What's the 80-20 rule? You should spend 80% of your time on that which is 80% important and 20% of your time on that which is 20% important. And the color of the table at the Freedom Fund banquet is in the 20%. Who sits where at the Freedom Fund banquet is in the 20%. Who turns around and makes justice happen in your community? That's the 80%. And the more time you spend on the minor, the less time you have to spend on the major. The other thing is you must inspect what you expect. I learned this the hard way. You can't just leave it to chance. If you expect a certain thing to happen, a certain outcome, you should not inspect it at the end. You should inspect it all along in the process. Inspect what you expect. And finally, and this is for us in this membership campaign that you're in, that you should always be in, what gets measured gets done. What gets measured gets done. We ought to be measuring our units by their strength and by the strength of their membership. If you don't have members and you don't have a large membership, how can anybody be afraid of you? You know where I'm going. I'm about to go there. And so what gets measured gets done. I challenge you to measure. Use the data, not as your enemy, but your friend. Not as something just to brag about, something that you know can change your community. How many folk are registered to vote? How many voted the last time? How many voted the time before that? How many folk work for your county? How many folk work for your city? Every corporation has to complete an EO1 form. You should get the EO1 form, which talks about employment. There should be a way for you to measure diversity. What gets measured gets done. If you show up at the meetings, call and demand the meeting, talk to the CEO and the company, and demand that there's inclusion and equity. They'll think you're crazy at first, but you keep going, and before you know it, you'll understand why I say what gets measured gets done. And what's that final measurement? You know what it is. If the NAACP is going to be what it is, it must become big, bad, and bodacious. That means that the NAACP must become the big dog. And no matter what community you're in, you must be that big dog. America's a big dog country. You know it and I know it. If you don't have a big dog, she'll eat your lunch. The reason China gets our attention, because they got a big dog. The reason Russia gets our attention, they got a big dog. If you don't have a big dog, America does not care. And the same thing inside of America. NAACP, you can't rest on your history. You can't talk about what we used to do. You can't just talk about what we were back in the day. You ain't back in the day, you in today. And so you need to be strong today and not last week and not last year and not 10 years ago. Don't live on what was, live on what was will not spend today. You have to use what you have today. So I challenge you, when America says they will only listen to the big dog, answer the question, are you the big dog? I say this in my jest, and I used to close with this all the time. When people ask you in your banquets, in your community, what has NAACP done for me lately? Why don't I see the NAACP? Why are they not barking and speaking and talking on my behalf? That might be because you become a little dog. You know what I say? NAACP needs to be the Doberman, the Rottweiler, the Pit Bull. And if you're not that big and people ask you to be that big, you have to ask them the question, have you fed your dog lately? Are you the big dog? Why aren't you barking? Are you the big dog? Why aren't you biting? If you're the big dog, why don't you go make somebody pay attention to the big dog? And when you do the work and do the work the way I know you can, then you can listen to that song in reggae. And the song in reggae says, who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? I asked the question, NAACP, are you ready to let the dogs out?